EFT tapping, it's a really powerful tool, but I would hate to see you write it off as something that's invalid or doesn't work or seem even silly because it doesn't provide you the instant relief on certain topics. So, for example, you watch a YouTube video, it's like EFT tapping for headache, EFT tapping for depression and anxiety, weight loss, fill in the blank. Sometimes I would say, unfortunately, it's presented in this way as though it's this almost mystical type of tool that, if you're lucky, it'll work on almost anything from like any disease to any condition, and it should work really quickly. The tricky thing with EFT is sometimes it will work quite quickly, and you will have a sort of almost magic-like experience. I've seen it described that way, or wow, I did some tapping and something changed in my body. A particular symptom may have changed because, and I'll get into it in a second, there is some actual physiological stuff that happens by tapping on these points. And if whatever you're experiencing happens to be the result of just some tension you're holding or something, let's say it's a little more minor, even if it's chronic, you could be chronically held in a position and you do some tapping and it helps. Okay, if it does, great. But if it doesn't, let's not write off the tool. And if you've only had experiences where, yeah, I tried that once and it didn't do anything, let's also not discard it, because I want to give a little context of how it actually works and how it can be a very useful tool to have in your overall strategy for your own inner work, your own emotional healing, working with your own traumas. Even on that level, it can be a very powerful thing to have in your toolbox. There's a very big difference between using EFT systematically to help desensitize, to help you approach really challenging situations in a logical way versus like, oh, I'm just going to tap on my depression. Right? It's too broad. And so the way it works is there are actual, let's say, physiological aspects to EFT. These particular points have been studied and even more deeply recently. I'll link a video of Peta Stapleton explaining in much more detail what's actually happening on these points. They do send signals to parts of the brain and parts of the nervous system. I say parts of the nervous system, that gets a little deep, but ultimately there is an actual calming response that gets sent. And what we're doing with an EFT process is we are intentionally bringing something into our conscious mind that we have an emotional reaction to. So our body might react as well. So let's say, for example, you have a fear of spiders. Now, you might consciously bring in a little bit of that fear, maybe a spider at a distance, right? And just by bringing that picture into mind or a memory of something that happened to us, these cascades of effects start happening. We remember that, we feel the emotion. What we're doing, hopefully with some art form and skill involved, is, okay, that conscious signal is in the brain and that fear response is taking place. Like, oh, that spider, that memory of that fall. And while that is being triggered, we are using this to desensitize, literally desensitize your reaction to that trigger, as well as, providing safety, possibly some cognitive reframing of the situation. So that is, in a super nutshell, kind of what's happening. So you can see why you might not be able to just tap on a broad subject with video and have it just magically do something. And also why it's often presented in a pretty non-nuanced way. You're going to, in many cases, need to personalize it a little bit. So you're getting in touch with your own feeling of the situation and using the tapping to help really desensitize and help create more of a sense of calm. Now, if it accomplishes even a little bit of that, let's say, for example, you're a 10 out of 10 in fear, and you do that and it goes to like a 9.5, that's actually great news. It means some process is taking place. It could be repeated, and there may be some components where you say, okay, this is a little intense for me. I might need to do this a little more gently. I might need to work with someone. There's a lot of resources for that. And you can look up something called the gentle techniques with EFT. So the point is you can approach this very systematically. So something in your life may have a lot of layers, and you can't just boil it down to like, oh, my anger. It might help in the moment to tap on anger, and it probably will do something to the body. But if you have, let's call it an anger issue, a just generalized tapping on anger might not cut it for you. And again, I would hate for the whole technique to be thrown out because it's like, oh, I tried that. It didn't get rid of my anger issue. If it can bring down any aspect, any feeling of emotional trigger. So for example, you would remember a time when you were angry and you would take one component of it, one thing that person said that really agitated you. And okay, that thing they said, that thing they said, that thing they said. And it brings that down a little bit. That can start a chain of events that you can continue to work through. And sometimes you almost never have to go through every single piece of it, but it becomes a tool that can actually break these chains of mental and emotional cycles. So I do that. I do that as best I can in the videos on my channel. You'll see me as best I can trying to tune into an emotional aspect and speaking to that rather than just like anger, getting rid of the anger, right? That would be a kind of a quick fix, temporary relief type of solution. I'm going to link to another video talking about the difference between sort of what you might call quick fix symptom relief techniques like EFT tapping, quick fix EFT tapping, which is valid when you understand what it is, versus using it to work on a deeper emotional issue. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I will see you on the next video.